Information-fueled.
Opinion-driven.
This is Nashville's Morning News with Dan Mandis.
And so, my fellow Americans,
we talk news.
5:06, Nashville's Morning News on Super Talk 99.7 WTN. Good morning to you, friends. Hope you are doing well. It is Wednesday, March 12th. I got to tell you, Trump had a great day yesterday. Seems like, at least for right now, he has won the trade war with Canada. We'll get into that momentarily. We've got Ukraine agreeing to a 30-day ceasefire. We're going to get into that as well. There's some new polling that has come out, and people still digging what Donald Trump is doing. In other words, it does seem to me like the president is on a roll. So I've got a big show ahead. Hope you're doing well. We do have the super text line. It is open. Send me a note. Tell me good morning. 615-737-9986. Joan is here as well. KGB is producing. Let's get into the news. Today is a big day in the tariff war between Canada and America, as the increased tariffs on steel and aluminum is now taking effect. You heard Joan talking about that there in the news from the Associated Press. Trump's action to bulk up protections for American steel and aluminum producers restores effective global tariffs of 25% on all imports of the metals and does extend the duties to hundreds of downstream products made from the metals, from the nuts and the bolts to bulldozer blades and soda cans. The run-up to the tariff deadline came with some drama yesterday as Donald Trump threatened Canada with doubling that duty to 50% on its steel and aluminum exports to the U.S. Now, personally, I found all of this to be rather entertaining, but you do remember this from yesterday. We were talking about this, where you did have Canadian Premier Doug Ford. He is from Ontario, Canada, and he was talking all kinds of trash.
I will not hesitate to shut the electricity off completely.
Remember all this? He was threatening to cut the electricity to New York and Michigan and Minnesota. Well, apparently Donald Trump got a little ticked off at that, as he should, because this guy, he escalated from tariffs to literally cutting the power to 3 American states. Now, as I discussed yesterday in great detail, there's a lot of other places for these states domestically to get their electricity, and I really do believe that this should be inspiration to upgrade our grid, to do what we need to do to stop using Canadian electricity. And so I think that's part of what happened yesterday is the Trump team reached out to Doug Ford, Ontario, Canada Premier, and say, dude, you need to chill out. So Trump comes back yesterday, again, with this threat of doubling that 25% tariff to 50%. And suddenly Doug Ford says, never mind.
There's a point that both parties are heated and the temperature needs to come down.
I think a couple of things happened. I think that Trump's team did reach out to him, and Trump's team did say, dude, you need to chill out or else. Now, listen to how Doug Ford, Ontario, Canada Premier, frames the conversation.
And Secretary Lutnick has sent out an olive branch to us to come down and immediately meet with him, meet with the whole trade administration, and discuss the future.
Yeah, so you can tell he's been humbled. You can tell that he has been humbled, and he had to go in front of the microphone. He had to make nice with the Trump administration. Ford and his team, I guess what's happening now is they're flying in to see Donald Trump's team tomorrow. They're flying to D.C. That is important. In other words, they need to make this right with Donald Trump because they escalated this thing way beyond reason.
So I want to thank Secretary Lutnick for reaching out, putting that olive branch in. I've been in business a number of years, a lot of negotiations, and part of the last negotiation, when someone does that, you have to respect that person for putting out that olive branch, and I'm going to make sure we go down there and have a very good but strong and confident conversation.
Right. pretty sure that respect is going one way, because I'm reasonably certain that the Trump administration is looking at Ontario Canada Premier Doug Ford as just somebody who they don't really want to have to deal with. They are. He is flying in to see them. And I think part of what happened too, because I listened to his whole statement, part of what happened too is that he got slapped around by some of the other premiers. I think that's part of what's going on. Remember, this guy, again, he's like the governor of his province. So he's talking smack, and then Trump threatens all of Canada. So I think part of what happened is he got an earful from the other premiers in Canada because he came back with his tail between his legs.
I feel as a province, and I only speak for the province of Ontario, I want to reaffirm I do not speak for any other premiers. Everyone's very patriotic, and we have the best premiers I've ever seen. But basically, I was talking out my arse. I think that is basically what he had to come back and say. Now, as you can imagine, this was a really big topic of discussion yesterday. The Associated Press, during the White House press briefing, they asked a really loaded question. I don't know if you've heard this yet. You probably have, but I love how Caroline Leavitt responded accordingly. Listen to the Associated Press and how they asked about these tariffs.
When President Trump last addressed the BRT when he was on the campaign trail, his big push was on tax cuts. He's going there today as he's proposing tax hikes in the form of tariffs. And I'm curious for why he's prioritizing that over the tax cuts.
He's actually not implementing tax hikes. Tariffs are a tax hike on foreign countries that, again, have been ripping us off. Tariffs are a tax cut for the American people. And the president is a staunch advocate of tax cuts. As you know, he campaigned on no taxes on tips, no taxes on overtime, no taxes on Social Security benefits. He is committed to all three of those things, and he expects Congress to pass them later this year.
So this AP reporter, he frames it as a statement that Trump is trying to raise taxes. Now, clearly, if you know anything about this, and I know that you do, that's not what Trump is doing. A tax is a tax and a tariff is a tariff. They're two completely different things. Now, you can interpret it as a tax hike if you want, but if we're going to really be honest about this, a tariff is a tariff and a tax is a tax. Now, the result itself from these tariffs may or may not result in higher prices in the short and the long term. We'll have to wait and see how it goes. But bottom line is, this is not a tax hike. So the premise of the question, it is flawed and it is dishonest.
This year.
I'm sorry, have you ever paid a tariff? Because I have. They don't get charged on foreign companies. They get charged on the importers.
And ultimately, when we have fair and balanced trade, which the American people have not seen in decades, as I said at the beginning, revenues will stay here, wages will go up, and our country will be made wealthy again. And I think it's insulting that you're trying to test my knowledge of economics and the decisions that this president has made. I'm now regret giving a question to the Associated Press.
There you go, the Associated Press. Winning influence with the White House. And so we'll have to see if, and by the way, I don't like the way that they frame the question. However, it is a legit question to ask, but just in a different way. We're going to get into that and a whole lot more from Super Talk 99.7 WTN. It is 5:15. Time to check the roads. I was out at the park yesterday. I'm going to go out to the park today. Those two really white Q-tip looking things that you see at the Charlie Daniels Park is going to be my legs. Because I need to get out into the sun. I need to get some sun. And I think today might be the first day of shorts wearing season for me is perhaps today. I'm going to break out the jorts, Joan.
You're going to get the jorts
I'm going to break
going?
out the jorts. Yeah.
Are you going to spread out a blanket and put some tanning lotion on and put some aluminum foil on some box and so that you get a little tan on your face too?
Sure, that's what I'm going to do.
Yeah. I'll bring the camera.
Yes. I got to tell you, it was really nice yesterday. I was actually breaking out in a sweat.
Yeah.
So it was nice, actually. So now today it's going to be 75, right now 56 at Super Talk 99.7 WTN. Joe, did you hear the way the AP framed that question?
Oh, yes.
When
That
he
was the AP. Of course it was.
Yeah. And as a
Have
journalist.
you ever paid a tariff?
Right. I mean, as a journalist, you know, and I know as a recovering journalist, that the way that he framed the question was accusatory.
Yeah. Oh.
There's other ways to frame that question and ask that question and not try to make it into like a statement, which is exactly what he did. So I understand the way that she answered was rather hostile, but you know what? He deserved a little hostility for the way that it was asked. And here's the great thing about Caroline Leavitt is she's not afraid to fight back. You know, if it was Corinne Jean-Pierre, she would just lie and stick to her notes. But Caroline Leavitt, I mean, she gave it right back to him, both barrels, and I loved it. And part of the conversation with these tariffs, and this is important, is that she is able to make the distinction between tariffs and taxes. This guy from the Associated Press clearly came in with an agenda, and that's fine. She did answer it well, I thought, but then she went on to talk about tariffs from Canada and other parts of the world as well, just to let people know how unfair these tariffs are when it comes to our exports into other parts of the world.
If you look at the rates of tariffs across the board that Canadians have been imposing on the American people and our workers here, it is egregious. If you look at Canada, American cheese and butter, nearly 300% tariff. You look at India, 150% tariff on American alcohol. You think that's helping Kentucky bourbon be exported into India? I don't think so. 100% tariff on agricultural products from India. Look at Japan, tariffing rice, 700%. President Trump believes in reciprocity, and it is about dang time that we have a president who actually looks out for the interests of American businesses and workers. And all he's asking for at the end of the day are fair and balanced trade practices, and unfortunately, Canada has not been treating us very fairly at all over the past several decades.
So make him a state. I'm just kidding. I loved how Gary and Eric over the on the overnight show, Red Out Radio, great show. And they were making the case, and it's a case we've all made, where United States does not want Canada as a state. One of the things that Caroline Leavitt did during the White House press briefing yesterday, she continued to talk about the White House talking point of making Canada a 51st state. And they made the argument last night, Gary and Eric did, that, listen, here's the thing. They are full of liberals. We don't need that kind of representation in the House of Representatives or the Senate. Because Canada, by and large, I mean, they're all just a bunch of progressives. So if we actually made them a state, then the House of Representatives would, quite frankly, permanently be in the control of the Democrats. When this whole thing started, we were talking about that. It's like Canada, Trump knows that they're liberal, right? And we don't necessarily want them as a 51st state because we've got our own problems with progressives here. We don't need to import their own issues. So anyway, there you have it. Good day for Trump yesterday. Am I interpreting that appropriately, do you think, Joan?
I do.
Good day for Trump. It's
I
like
do.
This premier from Canada has to come back tail between his legs after threatening 3 of our states. And, you know, let's be honest, if you threaten 3 of our states, you're threatening all of us. That's number one. So he has to come back tail between his legs.
That one gave me the most joy. I don't know why, but that one gave me a lot of joy.
Well, you've been hearing me, you know, play this Jackhole's audio for the past week or so. And, you know, it's always great when these people talk tough. But then when Trump lowers the boom, it's almost like the mafia. Do you know what? The guy in the Doug Ford, the premier of Ontario, you know what happened? He got a horse head in his bed.
Yes, I think he may have.
That's what happened. And again, great news with Ukraine. We're going to talk about that and a whole lot more. Very busy day on Super Talk 99.7. It's 5:21 now. Joan Jones is in the WTN newsroom. Joan, what's going on?